Hey everyone. So today we're going to be taking a deep dive into Homo Rebellis. And this book, it really gets into this whole question of what makes us tick, like what makes us human.
It's really interesting actually how it kind of contrasts those like primal instincts we have
Mm.
with this modern world we live in. Like
Mm.
we're surrounded by smartphones and self-driving cars,
Yeah.
but a lot of us still feel like, you know,
Like we should be living in caves.
yeah, like we should be living in caves exactly.
Yeah, the book actually calls that whole thing the paradox of progress. Like we've got all this amazing technology, we're living longer than ever, but so many people are still anxious and unhappy. You know what I mean?
Totally. It's like our genes haven't quite caught up to all the advancements we've made, right? We
Yeah.
create all these solutions, but then we're kind of stuck with this like,
This ancient hardware.
yeah, this ancient hardware, and it's trying to run modern software.
It's true. Okay, but here's where I thought it got really interesting. The book doesn't just like dump all this evolutionary doom and gloom on us. It actually challenges that whole survival of the fittest thing. Like it argues that cooperation, even altruism is just as hardwired into us as competition. What was their term for it? Altruistic rebellion, something like that.
Altruistic rebellion, yeah. Basically, it suggests that even when we're being selfless, there might be this underlying evolutionary advantage. Like, think about it. When we help others, we build stronger communities. And stronger communities mean better chances of survival. So even in our most selfless acts, there's this element of, hey, this actually benefits me too.
Whoa, so it's like the secret language of motivation almost. Like we think we're being nice just to be nice, but deep down our genes are like playing 4D chess.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, what does it really mean to be selfless then? It's like this fascinating interplay between our desire to be good and those evolutionary benefits of cooperation we were talking about.
It's true. It really makes you think. Okay, so we're hardwired for connection, for cooperation, that's clear. But where do gender roles fit into all of this? Does Homo rebellis talk about that? Are men and women really from different planets, like they say, or is that mostly learned behavior, societal stuff?
Yeah, it actually dives into that a bit. It acknowledges that, yeah, there are some biological differences between men and women, but it emphasizes that a lot of what we perceive as typical male or female behavior is really shaped by our culture, by societal norms.
So it's like nature and nurture both playing a role.
Exactly. It's this complex dance between the two, and it's hard to say where one ends and the other begins.
So if like society has such a big impact on us, I mean, does that mean we're kind of stuck with whatever programming we were raised with? What about like all the self-help books that are like transform your life? Can we actually do that?
That's where Homo rebellis gets really,
Uh-huh.
really empowering, I think. It talks about this thing called neuroplasticity. Basically, it means our brains are constantly changing and adapting like throughout our entire lives.
Really?
Yeah.
I always thought like once you reach a certain age, that's it.
Uh,
You can't teach an old dog new tricks.
well, it turns out our brains are a lot more flexible than we give them credit for. It's not like, a computer where you've got a fixed hard drive. Every time we learn something new or have a new experience, our brains actually create new pathways and connections.
Wait, so you're saying like we can actually rewire our own brains?
In a way, yeah. Think of it like working out a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets, right?
Yeah.
It's the same with our brains. The more we challenge them, the more we push ourselves outside our comfort zones, the more adaptable and resilient we become.
That's pretty amazing when you think about it. So we're not like stuck with the same old wiring our whole lives. We can actually upgrade it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the book talks about how we can use this to like overcome trauma, break bad habits, even boost our creativity. There's this really cool story in the book about Hans Christian Andersen, the guy who wrote all those fairy tales.
Yeah, yeah.
So he actually had a really rough childhood, but instead of letting it, destroy him, he channeled all those experiences into his writing.
Wow. So it's like our struggles can actually become fuel for our creativity. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But let's be real for a sec. We're living in a world that feels, I don't know, kind of overwhelming sometimes, like all the time, really.
Yeah.
Does Homo Rebellis talk about how to deal with all that? I mean, we've got information overload, social media, this pressure to be on 24/7. It's a lot.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And the book, it definitely doesn't sugarcoat the downsides of technology and this always-on culture we live in. Like, it talks about how all that information overload can make it hard to focus, make it hard to make decisions even. And then there's social media, which, it can be great for connecting with people, but it can also make us feel anxious, inadequate, like we're not good enough.
Yeah, tell me about it. Comparison is the thief of joy and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's definitely something we need to be mindful of.
So, how do we find that balance then? Like, how do we take advantage of all the good things technology has to offer without letting it take over our lives?
Homo rebellis, it talks about that, right?
Good.
It seems like everywhere you turn, there's like a new way to like hack your happiness.
Yeah.
Meditation apps and gratitude journals and all that. But does Homo rebellis get into any of that? Like, are there actually any practical tips for finding more, I don't know, more joy in our lives from like this whole evolutionary perspective we've been talking about?
Yeah, it does. It makes this really interesting point about how true happiness, it's not like some destination we arrive at. It's more about understanding what really motivates us, deep down.
Okay, so like what we were saying before about those evolutionary
Yeah.
drives, connection and purpose and all that. Exactly. The book argues that when we align our lives with those needs, with those core drives, that's when we're most likely to find, a real sense of fulfillment.
So it's about like playing the long game, I guess, not just chasing quick fixes or whatever.
Right. And a big part of that is, nurturing those human connections, those relationships. And actually there's this fascinating section in the book about something called mirror neurons. Basically, these neurons, they fire both when we do something ourselves and when we see someone else doing it.
Wait, really? So like if I see you pick up a glass of water,
Yeah.
my brain is basically mirroring that action.
Exactly. Which means, essentially, we're wired for empathy. We're literally designed to understand and share the experiences of others.
Wow, that's wild. So it's like our brains are literally connecting with each other on like a cellular level.
Pretty much. And it just goes to show, how important those connections are, those relationships. They're not just like a nice bonus. They're actually essential for our well-being.
That makes a lot of sense. So after spending all this time with Homo rebellis, what's like the one big takeaway for you? What's the idea that really stuck with you?
Honestly, for me, it's this idea that, we're not just prisoners of our past or our genetics or whatever. We have this incredible ability to learn and grow and change throughout our lives.
Oh, we do.
Yeah. And by understanding how our brains work,
Yeah.
by, becoming aware of our biases and by really leaning into that neuroplasticity we talked about, we can actually take control of our own destinies in a way.
I like that. That's hopeful, right? Like
Right.
we're not just robots running on some pre-programmed code. We can actually learn to write our own code.
Exactly.
Well, there you have it, everyone. Another deep dive in the books. Hopefully this conversation about Homo rebellis gave you some new insights about, what makes us human, why we do the things we do, and maybe even inspired you to embrace your own potential for growth. Anyway, that's it for today. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those big questions, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.